Absolutely. Here's Section 1. The End of Peace, expanded to a minimum of 700 words, written in full story prose. Hashtag Section 1. The End of Peace. For 1,000 years, Earth knew peace. Not the fragile kind, held together by threats or uneasy truces, but true peace, earned, learned, and lived. The scars of war still dotted the planet's surface, but they had become sacred reminders, not active wounds. Cities floated above the clouds, children learned mathematics beside sentient trees, and machines handled everything from food production to planetary defense simulations no one had ever expected to use again. The last war, fought over 9 centuries ago, had nearly consumed humanity. AI historians referred to it as the final lesson. It began with orbital strikes, escalated into climate weaponry, and ended only after the near extinction of 2/3 of the planet's population. When peace finally came, it wasn't because one side had triumphed, it was because both sides had realized they'd all lost. Afterward, humanity swore never to forget what it had done, or what it had survived. Peace was not gifted to them by some higher power or negotiated through diplomacy. It was forged, painfully, by their own hands. The global government that emerged was not perfect, but it was wise. A council of humans and AI co-governed, ensuring stability with a system that adapted itself constantly, eliminating threats long before they festered. Eventually, the stars opened to them, faster than light travel. Terraforming, colonies stretching beyond Alpha Centauri. And with that expansion came contact with others. The Intergalactic Concord, often simply called the Concord, was an alliance of over 400 alien civilizations. When humans joined in the 36th century, they were greeted as idealists, still young compared to the millennia-old races in the Concord. The humans brought with them songs, arts, philosophy, and open hands. Many in the Concord found their optimism infectious. A few found it irritating, and one race found it unacceptable. The Dravex Dominion had been presumed extinct for nearly 700 years. The last records described them as a ruthless, warfaring empire that collapsed under its own weight. No one had seen them in generations, until the deep space listening posts on the edge of human Sector 9 detected gravity distortions inconsistent with natural celestial motion. Within days, the outer colonies went dark, communications severed, outposts obliterated. Then came the broadcast. It was not sophisticated. The message was a snarling, guttural challenge broadcast across all Concord frequencies. The 1,000-year cowardice ends today. We are Dravex. We declare war. We begin with Earth. The message repeated 12 times in different galactic languages, then cut off. Silence followed. The Concord council chambers were in chaos. Most of the member species had never even fired a weapon in active combat. War had become theoretical, studied in universities, discussed as a curiosity. Even their defensive fleets were more ceremonial than practical. But on Earth, the response was strange. News of the Dravex declaration spread instantly. Emergency meetings were called. AI models projected potential casualties. Yet, on social feeds and forums, something unexpected began happening. Humor. It began with jokes. They want to fight us? Someone tell them we used to nuke each other over borders. Memes followed. Ancient war heroes were resurrected as comic book characters. Old battlefield slogans trended. Soldiers long dead had their stories reposted with reverence and a subtle kind of pride. In one broadcast, a famed human historian, Dr. Lonnie Coe, spoke calmly on a Concord-wide feed. There's a mistake the Dravex have made. They think peace made us soft. That we've forgotten what we were. But we chose peace. That choice doesn't erase our past. It means we remember it very well, better than they do. Across the planet, long-dormant systems stirred. Deep beneath Olympus Mons on Mars, a vault older than most Earth cities came online. Its name was simple, ominous: Project Ragnarok. It had been deactivated for 9 centuries, considered a relic of a bygone age. But nothing in it had been allowed to rot. Every defense satellite, every orbital cannon schematic, every war protocol, preserved, maintained. just in case. The Martian governor initiated a classified priority signal, voice trembling as he authorized its reactivation. This is not an act of aggression. It is remembrance and readiness. On Luna, humans stood beneath the night sky, gazing up at the stars. A father placed a hand on his son's shoulder and whispered, "They think war is something we've forgotten, but we built peace on top of it. The bones are still there." And across Earth, an idea began to spread. Not fear, not anger, but a steady, simmering anticipation. The peace had lasted 1,000 years. 1,000 years of rest. 1,000 years of restraint. But if war had truly returned, then it was the Dravex who should be afraid. Let me know if you'd like to dive straight into Section 2, F. Develop Project Ragnarok, F. In more depth, or flesh out Dr. Lonnie Keough's character arc, F. Of course. Here's Section 2, The Laughter of Warborn, written in full story prose with a minimum of 700 words. Hashtag Section 2, The Laughter of Warborn. Krextal of the Dravex Dominion had been preparing for this moment his entire life. He had read the ancient Dominion archives, accounts of humans as cunning, bloodthirsty, and capable of annihilating entire fleets with relentless efficiency. But the more recent records painted a different picture. Peacekeepers, diplomats, soft-spoken utopians who had turned war into mythology. He had expected fear. He had expected pleas for negotiation, desperate attempts to preserve their precious peace. What he found instead was laughter. Not mockery. Not arrogance. Laughter, genuine, eager, and hungry. Earth's net space exploded with activity, not panic. Old war documentaries shot to the top of every stream. Tactical simulation games with names like Warborn and Iron Planet saw tens of millions of new users within hours. "It's finally happening" became the top trending phrase across human networks. Krextal watched in confusion as soldiers in ceremonial uniforms posted videos on something called TikTok, performing weapon drills while remixing ancient Earth battle anthems. In one clip, a woman in power armor saluted the camera, saying, "Grandpa told me stories about the collapse. Guess it's my turn now." He ordered his intelligence officers to investigate. Surely this was some mass psychological denial mechanism. But the reports returned with a chilling conclusion. They are not pretending. They are excited. In the Concord Central AI repository, Dr. Isle Retton, a xenopsychologist from the Volari species, delivered a public address to try to calm rising anxiety across member worlds. "You must understand, humans are not unfamiliar with violence. They evolved through it. War is not alien to them. It is part of their cultural bedrock. For the last millennium, they placed it behind walls, literally and metaphorically. But they never erased it. They studied it, tamed it, even played with it." She gestured to a screen behind her, showing thousands of archived human simulations, real-time strategy games, historical reenactments, martial arts competitions, even competitive drone combat leagues. Where most of us de-evolved our aggression, they ritualized it, laughed at it, made it a form of art. Across Earth, ancient warrior academies, protected as heritage institutions, flung open their doors. On the island of Okinawa, the Shinkai Temple activated its neural training dojo for the first time in 900 years. On Mars, veterans from the last war were reawakened from cryostasis under Article 9 of the Defense Revival Protocol. In one such chamber, General Elon Marius, once called the Butcher of Titan by enemies and the Iron Sentinel by allies, opened his eyes to a world that had long promised it would never need him again. As his systems synced with the military AI, he chuckled. "Woke me up for the Dravex? I thought they were extinct. This'll be fun." His body was upgraded within minutes, infused with nanoskeletal reinforcements and direct neural interface to the new battlefield net. He wasn't the only one. All across human colonies, thousands of dormant warriors rose again. But the most unsettling sight wasn't just the return of soldiers. It was the joy they radiated. It wasn't bloodlust. It wasn't vengeance. It was release. For centuries, humanity had kept its warborn instincts caged, buried under layers of social evolution. Now, the cage was opening, not in rage, but with a smile. On Venus, artists took to their studios, painting murals of phoenix-like armored figures rising from molten cities. Poets resurrected ancient verses from Earth's darkest times, reframing them with new defiance. Asterisk, we burned once. We were ash. Now we rise, blade in hand. Not for conquest, but to laugh at death. Asterisk. In orbit, a shipyard reactivated the Valkyrie Protocol, a program to construct dreadnoughts from nanosteel and quantum fabrics. Each vessel bore names like Resolute Memory, Echo of Earth, and Laughter's Edge. Meanwhile, across Concord space, fear spread, not from the Dravex, but from what the humans were becoming again. Ambassador Kirill of the Lernathi addressed the Concord Council. You see it, don't you? They're happy. They are warriors with patience. Predators who chose hibernation. And you woke them up. Even Krextal began to understand. The war he had declared was no longer a threat. It had become a challenge, and humans loved challenges. They didn't cower at the return of war. They welcomed it. Back on Earth, a final message was transmitted from the unified Earth government to the Dravex Dominion. We accept your declaration. We will meet you where you stand. We will try not to enjoy it too much. And that was the moment the galaxy realized. The 1,000-year peace had not erased human war. It had merely made them miss it. Let me know if you'd like to jump into Section 3's battle sequence. F. Explore General Elon Marius's backstory. F. Or expand on the Dravex Dominion's war culture. F. Absolutely. Here's Section 3. War like no other, written in full story prose with a minimum of 700 words. Hashtag Section 3. War like no other. The first engagement was meant to be symbolic. The Dravex High Command chose Kepler, 78b, a lightly defended mining colony on the edge of human Sector 12. It had only a few thousand workers, minimal orbital defenses, and no known military installations. The Dravex expected a swift victory, something to break the illusion of peace and send a message to Earth and the Concord. War was real again. What they encountered instead was death by silence. The fleet of 10 Dravex warships entered orbit unchallenged. No defense grid activated. No fighters scrambled. The surface below was dark, abandoned. The commanding officer ordered a sweep, confident the humans had already fled. They hadn't. The first cruiser vanished mid-pass, imploding as if crushed from the inside. No external energy signatures, no impact trails. Just gone. The second was torn apart by a swarm of what their sensors first registered as space debris. In truth, they were adaptive nanodrones, stealth-embedded fragments of ancient defense programs reactivated by Project Ragnarok. Each drone learned from its target in milliseconds, replicating weaknesses and sharing them across the swarm. Within 5 minutes, half the Dravex fleet was gone. No warning. No resistance. Just annihilation. Captain Thravnal, one of the survivors, sent a desperate message to High Command. They're not fighting back. They're not even trying. This is something else. What Thravnal couldn't know was that Kepler, 78b, had never been undefended. It had simply been a test site for human predictive defense systems. The AI overseeing it, designated Horus, had run 1 million war simulations during the last 9 centuries. When the Dravex arrived, it simply executed the highest efficiency plan. And no one even had to pull a trigger. Word spread across the galaxy. Earth had won its first battle without deploying a single soldier. But the soldiers were coming. The second engagement was entirely different. This time, humanity sent troops. The 9th Tactical Descent Brigade, nicknamed the Laughing Legion, was deployed to the planet Yovrax, a Dravex stronghold known for its brutal gravity and toxin-laced atmosphere. The Concord considered it a suicide mission. The humans called it a warm-up. They didn't arrive in ships. They arrived in meteors. Orbital insertion via kinetic pods disguised as debris, each carrying a single soldier in an adaptive exosuit. They slammed into the surface, rising from the craters like mythic figures from ancient legends. Armor that shimmered between visible and invisible, weapons that morphed shape based on enemy loadout, and most disturbing of all, asterisk, they were laughing star. Not in cruelty.
Enjoy.
As if this was what they'd trained for their whole lives. The Dravex resistance lasted 12 minutes. Human tactics were unlike anything the Dominion had seen. They didn't follow formations. Their units acted independently, but somehow always in sync. Commanders adjusted real-time strategies through Neuralink AI partners who anticipated enemy reactions before they happened. One Dravex officer later reported, "They fought like fire. Not a front line, but a flood. They danced around us. They smiled while they burned everything we knew." This wasn't just war. It was an art form. Back in the Concord capital, ambassadorial species scrambled to understand what they were witnessing. The Elivari, a species known for their emotionless logic, held an emergency convocation. A single phrase echoed in their chamber. This is what humans were before peace. Now, imagine what they are with it. Even ancient races, once dismissive of humanity's capacity, began to reevaluate. The humans were not brutes. They were refined predators. Predators who had spent 1,000 years in self-imposed exile from their own instincts. Now, those instincts had been invited back. The Battle of Ada Cygni marked the turning point of the war. The Dravex launched a last-ditch offensive with their flagship, the Oblivion Maw, leading the charge. It was a massive vessel, 10 kilometers long, capable of planetary bombardment, shielded by quantum-fold armor and defended by thousands of drone interceptors. It disappeared in less than an hour. Human cyber units had infiltrated its data architecture weeks prior. They didn't destroy the ship. They captured it from within. In the midst of battle, the bridge crew of the Oblivion Maw found themselves no longer aboard the ship. They were standing in what looked like an ancient Roman Colosseum. Simulated. Hyperreal. Surrounded by projections of humanity's most infamous warriors, Alexander, Hannibal, Saladin, the Iron Widow of Neptune. A voice rang out. "Welcome to the arena. You wanted war. Let's see how well you play it." The bridge had been transferred to a localized simulation zone embedded within the ship's core. Humans controlled everything now. The Dravex never fired another shot that day. The galaxy watched in awe. The war had only just begun, but its outcome was already clear. The humans weren't just fighting. They were performing, and they were performing for an audience that now realized just how dangerous Earth could be when it chose not to be peaceful. Let me know if you'd like to continue with Section 4's conclusion and legacy. F. Explore the design of the Laughing Legion. F. Or expand on Horus, the War AI. F. Absolutely. Here is Section 4. Echoes Beyond Victory, written in full story prose and expanded to a minimum of 700 words. Hashtag Section 4. Echoes Beyond Victory. By the 8th month of the war, the Dravex Dominion no longer resembled an empire. Their fleets were fractured, command structures decimated, and entire planets had surrendered before the arrival of a single human vessel. The name Earth no longer provoked disdain or contempt among alien worlds. It summoned silence. A silence filled with memory, dread, and a curious kind of respect. The Dravex had launched a war to reignite fear in a galaxy they deemed weak. They succeeded, but not in the way they intended. The fear belonged to them now. In the ruins of their capital world, Drakor, General Elon Marius stood among smoldering towers, armored boots crunching over shards of obsidian glass. Behind him, members of the Concord Security Corps moved through the broken city, not to conquer, but to record. History demanded proof that this war had happened, and proof of how it ended. Drakor hadn't been taken with orbital bombardment or mass civilian extermination. It had fallen through precision and theater. The final battle began not with an assault, but a broadcast. Human fleets arrived in orbit, but instead of immediate attack, they transmitted an ancient Earth artifact to every frequency across the Dravex system, a song. Beethoven's Symphony No. 9. In the language of music, humans announced they had come, not to exterminate, but to conclude. And when the humans landed, they brought not just warriors, but historians, mediators, and healers. This, above all else, confused the Dravex. The same species that had driven them to their knees now offered medical aid, rebuilt water systems, and reconnected power grids. Elon Marius stood before the remnants of the Dravex High Command, his voice calm, his tone almost paternal. You misunderstood us. You thought peace made us weak. But peace is the highest form of strength. We can build without conquest, create without domination, and when threatened, we can remind the stars why we chose peace in the first place. He dropped his rifle to the ground. We are not here to enslave you or erase you. We are here to make sure you learn. The Dravex, with no empire left to rule, signed an unconditional surrender. Concord forces moved in to oversee the demilitarization, while Earth's envoys set about doing what they had always preferred, restoring order through cooperation. And yet, the galaxy had changed. Species who had once ignored the humans now sought them as allies. Strategic partnerships, defensive treaties, and cultural exchanges exploded across Concord space. On planets like Velasa, massive sculptures of human warriors now stood alongside those of their own saints. Children on distant moons wore mock exocets in festivals, not to glorify violence, but to honor discipline and courage. But within Earth, a different conversation was unfolding. In the central Terranet forums, where philosophers, scientists, and AI congregated to discuss the future of humanity, questions emerged. Had they enjoyed it too much? The victory had been swift, controlled, and unrelenting. No atrocities. No war crimes. But the smiles, the laughter, the poems, the old songs, it had been joyful. And that unsettled many. In one streamed debate, AI philosopher Theta 8 posed the question directly. If peace is our highest ideal, why does war stir our soul so deeply? Have we merely suppressed the beast, or taught it to sing? The response came not from a general or a soldier, but from Dr. Lonnie Coe, the historian whose early speech had inspired billions. Her face was weary. Her eyes held centuries of human memory. We are both, she said, the child who builds sandcastles, and the storm that washes them away. The musician and the swordsman. We did not fight this war because we missed blood. We fought it because someone knocked on our door with violence. And we refused to forget who we once were.
She paused.
Perhaps our greatest strength is not that we know how to make war, but that we know when to stop. The humans demobilized quickly. Weapons returned to vaults. Soldiers to homes. AI command structures powered down, and war routines were archived once more under the banner of contingency protocol. The Earth Council passed new resolutions ensuring peace education would include not just diplomacy, but understanding the instincts that had made the war so efficient and so dangerous. As for the Dravex, they were not annihilated. With help, they began to rebuild, slowly, cautiously. Generations of conquest could not be undone in a decade, but under Concord watch, a different kind of culture began to bloom. And what of humanity? They returned to the stars, not as conquerors, but as keepers, guardians. The peace resumed, but now the galaxy understood its cost. On a distant asteroid converted into a museum, a plaque was erected bearing the names of every major human combat unit in the war. At its base, a simple inscription. Asterisk, we laughed because we remembered. We fought because we had to. We stopped because we could. Asterisk. In the quiet halls of the Concord Academy, alien children now study not just human music and literature, but their wars. Not as cautionary tales, but as testament. Peace was not something Earth had stumbled upon. It was something they had earned, again, and the stars would not forget it. Let me know if you'd like a full compiled version of the complete story, F, or maybe a sequel idea about a new emerging threat, F, or bonus material like Dr. Lonnie Coe's speech or war poems, F.